We'll begin the Public Safety, Health, and Welfare Committee meeting this evening at 7 p.m. Present are committee members Williamson, Kelly, and Glassburn, council members Gilchrist and Scarl, the Law Director, Safety Director, Service Director, Rec Director, HR Director, and the Special Assistant to the Mayor. The first item on the agenda, is ordinance 2022-84, which is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to purchase a 2023 Chevy Tahoe from Hanley Chevrolet for the North Olmsted Fire Department through the state purchase program at a cost of $45,057, and further authorizing the mayor to execute contract documents. Director.
Yes. Speak on this. Yes, Madam Chair, to members of the committee and council. This one is pretty straightforward. It was already accounted for in the budget. This is a new Chevy Tahoe that will replace a 2004 Ford Excursion. Obviously 18 years old. It's requiring more and more maintenance and assistance from fleet. So the new Tahoe will be used or assigned to the department captains as their shift command vehicles. And as mentioned, it's being purchased through the state of Ohio bid process. So it's just a matter of updating an old card for improved service and safety for the captains who are using it.
Is there a need to have an emergency clause on this? Do we need one?
Yeah, because it's, I would say yes because of the delay and getting parts and yes. Okay. Approved by council, yeah, by the committee, yes.
Okay. Are there any questions from committee?
So the 3-year bumper-to-bumper warranty that comes on these vehicles, does that still apply to a safety forces vehicle that can be used a little bit harder than a personal?
I do not know. I can find out for you.
They are. Excuse me.
Oh.
They are.
That's cool. Thank you.
I'll get right.
Are there any
We
other?
need to sit closer together. That's right.
Any other questions? All right, let the record reflect that, the finance records here as well as the economic development director. Then, seeing no further questions, I would like to make a recommendation, make a motion to recommend ordinance 2022-84 to all of council with the added amendment to add an emergency clause to this legislation as well as suspension. As for second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Kelly. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes with a vote of 3-0, and our meeting concludes at 7:03 p.m. Thank you.
Somebody will have to take care of that.
Sure.
Just not by my house tonight.
I understand we don't have
the
quorum
ability
for
to.
7:05, so
Correct.
wait till 7:15.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yep.
7:05, then make it official that we don't have a quorum, should I say that, on this reschedule?
Yeah, you can open the meeting, so open it, call it to order, and then announce if there's no quorum and close it.
Okay, 7:05.
Yeah. Who are that guy from that state?
Pardon me? Have I tried to?
Yeah.
Yes. No, yeah, that's what.
Madam President, if I may? No, but I mean, not you, the President.
Yeah, I know. Go for it.
7:05, the
Recreation, Public Parks and Buildings Committee is going to be canceled tonight due to no quorum, and it has been rescheduled for September 29th at 7:30 via GoToMeeting. Concludes my.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
Yes, I mean.
Okay.
Director. Call the principal's office.
Not by me.
Or Chuck needs to say.
That's fine.
No, I'm just tossing around over here. Sit around.
I won't be. It's my anniversary, sorry. Won't be.
I have to be here, why?
My sacrifice is that I'm buying a gift, and also spending $1,000 on a weekend getaway.
So what'd you get her after that?
I'm going shopping at some point tomorrow for that. I haven't quite figured that out.
Crumble cookie.
No.
Guess what
Oh, you are so big. Yeah, dangerous.
I could be
I'm really
recorded,
mad because
so
they had
I
a
just hope she's not
Friday,
watching.
and
I
they
just.
just Friday.
Oh, I heard you said you didn't go. I said,
And I'm sure that Eliza's losing
Yeah,
her mind right
right.
now.
I never
This,
had
this
one.
4-month sleep regression has really been something.
My son's girlfriend brought some over to the house
Oh, really?
for us to try. It was bad. Like, they were there and I ate one. And then the kids all went to school the next day and it was still there. And I kept walking past them. Yeah. Those were good.
They're long gone now.
Yeah. They got home from school. I was like, there's a couple pieces left. I can stay.
That's hard to say. I like all of it. And I did do the zip line.
You did it?
I did. I was
You're
did
good
that.
at these?
I did it, but
Were you scared
I
of
want
that?
to let my 16-year-old daughter show me. You know, it's like she was gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
What did you do?
The zip line.
Oh, you did? Was it fun?
Oh, wow. I want to try that.
The hardest part was walking up those steps to get to the top. It was like 100 steps at least.
Oh, I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, that was
The stairs are the long, yeah.
Oh, my touch started stepping on it.
It wasn't too bad. I didn't do the Superman. I didn't, but now that I see how it is, I would do that one next time. I thought, I didn't realize you rushed late on something. I thought you just kind of suspended it, so I was like, oh, I would do that. Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot more easier than
Here's the book I think I want. It's not really. That's like really planning ahead.
It was funny. It's like a whole rec room, I had a bar and a pool table.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very nice, yeah. How many people did it sleep?
I think seven slept 9.
Oh, that
Might have been 6 because I was worried about that many people.
Yeah.
Those meals were like 4 of us, so. Tuesday out on deck.
Oh, very nice, yeah.
Trails are beautiful.
And there was water.
Yeah. But it's still,
Older
it's
than
still
that.
good.
And the trickle, it wasn't just a trickle.
Right.
Usually in August, it's a trickle of water, if anything. Is it Old Man's Cave?
It's Old Man's Cave.
Yeah.
Oh, we've been there before. That's really nice of that. So the kids are all ready down.
Yeah, it's really nice. No surprise that it was that nice. Well, not all the trips. The first day we did 3 hours, like the
There were so many.
I can't remember. Is it Ash Cave? Is it Ash Cave? Old Man's Cave. We did some, 2 waterfalls, I can't remember what it was called.
More importantly, there's a slushy ones to go in.
It did have a slushy one. Actually, my son and I did the flight to
Yeah.
slushy.
Yeah.
Couldn't decide.
I know.
I don't know
Where
what
they
we
suck it up.
wanted. We kind of swapped the No. No, we
Testing the facility.
No, they had a meeting scheduled and then one for it, so.
Yeah, those are really good.
So now it's,
Yes, outside.
Yep. So that was what's wrong, so.
We got different people back.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
It's a good chair.
Yeah, is that right?
Yes.
Can I see you?
Actually, I got questions for Gary. I got find this, chair.
Mm.
I was gonna say a question about those cards, I think, city land, free land, planted areas, and also the orange. Actually, I want this way. I want to buy 40,000 because I can't buy this.
How about used,
41,000.
I picked up 65,000 and I rented it out. So,
for it too?
I'm currently under that, so. Oh, yeah, I know what guys are doing. I'm not gonna say what's wrong, brother? That's okay. I don't share that. My brother used to run all the Spitzer stores. Then he ran half the store for free, so he's pretty better. I know him. It wasn't, I know the name, but I didn't ask him.
Usually around 1.
Oh, 17? Yeah.
He's there.
He's back.
I don't know.
He lost a lot of money. Yeah. He was down to one ownership, and now I don't even own it. He's fine. He's back.
Sprained shoulder, big deal.
He's doing $200.
This year.
I think the ground circle. It's like 5. I think it's the same sport. Because some people battle for the morning states the same way.
Yes, we had. My brother used to write down about I'm gonna play next week for nation. Went ahead, he was on the Untitled Chapter.
Okay, okay. He still didn't get 150, you know. Not anymore. The Houston Texans. Finds that bowl.
Like someone else.
38?
Yeah.
She did this with the interim.
I grew up with the
and then they get virus
Oh my God, he's back there because I'm almost 60. But I think they put it in. Yeah, see, they were 30 out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing,
They're saying that what would be the recommendation to
That's how we are.
they're saying.
who do you work with right here?
Well, duties, finance, social advice, go right there.
What is this thing?
I'm not gonna use a movie here.
I
They would get those.
Sounds good
to me.
Okay, let's get started, since it's now 7:15. The Finance Committee of Council, present are committee members Glassburn and Williamson, council members Gilchrist, Kelly, and Scarl.
our full complement of directors, a full complement of assistants to the mayor, and guests. Tonight we have 5 items. I'm going to try to wait for our third finance committee member to do ARPA if that doesn't bother anybody. And so maybe the easier ones, so that I'm not springing this on Carrie, would be to start with 86 and 87, since they seem to be related, the Grafton and Pine Brook wetlands purchases. Could someone speak to either of those?
Sure, absolutely. So we're
And keep it to 3 minutes, please.
so we are trying to build and construct a south equalization tank that's 1.5 million gallons. In order to construct this tank, we need to have a certain space for the tank, and then also the dome that's going to go on top of the tank, which gets constructed on the side. The area that it's going to be constructed in is considered a forested wetland. So think of it as just a bunch of trees where when it rains, the water sticks around for a long period of time. We need to buy credits for wetlands to offset the area that we're going to disturb. And that's what this is for. So we have a Grafton wetlands and a Pine Brook wetlands. This is to encompass the total acreage that we're going to disturb. And I assume here that one of these was lower cost and we couldn't buy the total amount from that lower cost option. So we went to the next best that was available and we're purchasing the remaining credits from that. So that's the reason that there are 2 represented here, one for 150 and one for 126,000 respectively.
Pretty concise, very good. So that I write the correct notes, the item we're constructing is an equalizer tank, a retention tank. What's the correct term?
Flow equalization tank.
Flow equalization. Okay.
And this is for sanitary wastewater only, not stormwater.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Are there any questions from committee? Seeing none. Any questions from council? Okay, well then I will move to favorably, well, I'm sorry, let me ask one question. Carrie, where are we paying
Out of the
for this
wastewater fund.
The wastewater funds?
We have to pay 10% or 15% upfront, and then at some point in the future, which we're putting in next year's budget, is the other percentage, the 85%.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions that I just heard? Okay. Seeing none, I will move to favorably recommend -86, the Grafton wetlands credits, and ask for a second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Williamson. All those, well, we don't need any suspensions or anything else.
No, I don't think we asked for suspension.
Okay, just making sure before I
No, I don't think so.
voted everything out. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, Grafton passes 2-0. In the next one, I will move to favorably recommend the Pine Brook Wetlands Project -87 and ask for a second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Williamson. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. 2-0. Okay, is the next easiest Mr. Pinchek with the turf track? Or, I'm sorry, that item?
It's just appropriation.
Yeah, it's just yours, go for it.
Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is an ordinance appropriating the funds to purchase the field turf from Field Turf for $290,000, and this will be installed in the beginning to mid-January, where the tennis courts are currently located, as well as the gymnastics program in the recreation center. So this will allow us to provide a multitude of programs instead of just focusing on 3 different programs that we currently offer right now, from tennis, pickleball, and gymnastics. This will allow us not only to offer programs such as indoor soccer, baseball, football, lacrosse, camps, events, but it'll also provide a walking and running track for our community and the members. We have 3-lane walking and running track as well. So really excited about this, and this will be funded through hopefully
Funds through the county. Funds.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The city applied to the county for the funding to install this. It's going through second reading at the county tomorrow. That's expected to pass in early October with the county using county ARPA funding. But I think this legislation is for the capital improvements. Since this is a capital improvement, it requires 3 readings in 30 days from us as well.
So all that.
Okay, and if for some reason the county has a drastic change of heart, we would just restart this process or reevaluate?
Reevaluate.
Okay. In that case, are there any questions from committee? Any questions from council? Seeing none, I will move to favorably recommend -88 and ask for a second. Seconded by Councilman Williamson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's 2-0. That takes us to 83, the transfer appropriations.
If you want me to go through it, and then if there's specific questions, everybody's here.
That would be great, thank you.
I usually go off of the worksheet because it has the explanations next to it. And the first one is just we had to move a little bit of money for supplies for the fireworks show. We had the monies and materials and supplies. In economic development, we increased for $15,000 for a grant writer. I think that legislation is before council and might have passed. And also $1,500 for professional development and seminars. We took the monies out of architectural and engineering fees because we have money to last us for the rest of the year on that. Then in the division of building, we had to increase our cost for gas and oil and equipment parts. And we moved that from capital outlay because there were things that they did not do in there that allowed to cover that. In the division of aging, we had to increase for utility expenses, instructor payments, and the entertainment, and we moved monies out of materials and supplies to cover that. The Parks and Recreation Fund, we used $26,000 in salaries, and we moved $20,000 for increase for cleaning services, and $6,000 for because we've had higher refunds than what were anticipated. And maybe Tim, you might mention the cleaning services because that's something different.
Yeah, maybe an hour.
Yeah.
So we actually contracted out the cleaning service because we were so short-staffed over the summer. We only had 1 or 2 part-time people. Some of our full-time staff were out on medical leave as well, so we were really behind the 8 ball as far as cleaning the facility, so that's where that number came.
Do you plan on doing that for the rest of the year, or?
Through the end of the year, but probably not for next year.
Okay, that's what I thought. Then this will take us through the end of it.
Yep.
Okay. We had in court computerization. We had to increase some supplies. We needed to get something for our printer, and we moved that from capital outlay because we didn't need the monies in there for that. The solid waste and recycling fund, we just, as you've heard many a time with our purchasing of equipment lately, over this last year and a half, the lawnmower that we were getting for forestry is $15,000 more than what it was quoted at when we got the quotes. So, is Kevin in here still?
Yes, he is.
Okay, good.
We got the price before COVID, and then, you want to talk?
Yep.
Okay, and then everything went up, a couple other things went up also, purchase of a truck is, coming up later on also. The prices changed from when we did the budget.
And basically they've been able to told everybody to say, well, oh, if you don't want it, that's fine. But we need the lawnmower and it takes some time to get, so we're kind of in a position where the administration wanted to move forward on it.
I was just gonna jump in if it was okay, Mr. Chair,
Sure.
with the lawnmower. You guys have already approved legislation for this, but we'll come back and we'll ask that legislation to be amended to add in the additional cost. There was legislation passed, I think, in March that you guys actually approved the purchase of this.
Yeah, I was wondering, I thought we had done this.
You had, but by the time it had passed, the price had gone up and it went up above what you guys approved.
Yes.
Yes.
Some more, okay.
It's like when you look for airline tickets and you go out, you go back in and they're more expensive.
Right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And I think some of these quotes now they're specifically including the right to amend based on rising costs, so they include that on there, so it doesn't come as a total surprise. They're telling you up front they're gonna do it, so we know when it's coming in that it could happen. We don't know how much, we don't know if, we just know that it's a possibility.
And we weren't going to, after you guys approved it, we were not going to purchase it because it went up so much, but it's actually come down a little bit, and so it's dropped a little bit, so we figured at this point it'd make sense to go ahead and move forward with trying to get it this year.
Okay,
The next one?
Great Northern TIF, yeah.
Yes, we are increasing for the implementation of the aesthetic treatment improvements to Great Northern. I think it's for the consultant who.
It's for Osborne, the engineers of record that are actually overseeing the construction. So there was a design piece and there's also a construction management piece. So that's that particular.
And then there's also the legal fees for $25,000 in that number as well, under legal fees for Squires. And then the local fiscal recovery, which is ARPA, we're appropriating $25,000 for the Forest School Property Highest and Best Use Study for redevelopment. And I think that you already passed that legislation.
I believe so.
Then the next one in Land and Building Acquisition Fund is the purchase of spruce and forest, which is the $4 million and $5,000 for issuance cost. And then, let's see, Springville Ballroom. They were finishing the ballroom floor, which it looks really nice. But there was a part that was carpeted, but it had hardwood underneath, and so they wanted to take the carpet off and continue that refinishing. And then the sewer revenue fund, the $41,400 is for the 15% deposit on the wetlands credit.
I have a small question, but I'll ask. So, in aging, we're moving the 5,900 from materials and supplies to contractual services. How are we able to move 50% of materials and supplies?
Of the budget?
Yeah, it's literally half that budget line item.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know exactly, but I mean, they can, and they also have the 235 fund, the senior center fund, and a lot of their program costs come out of there, like the supplies and stuff for events. So these are more like administrative supplies.
If I could just add in there as well, so we also have a Silver Sneakers program now at the senior center. So we're generating more revenue that's coming in, but we have to pay for those instructors to teach those classes. That's why the instructors have gone up, but you don't see the revenues as of right now in this piece. So something that we've offered the classes for years, but we've never capitalized on actually getting the money. So.
As long as everyone else sees and is comfortable with, that's fine. It just caught my eye that a 50% decrease of a line item like materials and supplies is unusual that is able to be accommodated halfway through the year. True. So, okay. Are there any questions from committee? Any questions from council on any of these items? think I know the answer, but I'll ask the law director nonetheless. I'm in the clear on voting to pay for the appropriation, to do the appropriation on the bonds of the two schools.
I'm not aware of any precedent that would suggest that would come close to
I know.
raising that issue, so no, I think you're safe. I don't
Okay.
think that's a conflict at all.
Okay. So, in the interest of not creating this into two different documents, in that case, I will move to favorably recommend the transfer appropriations and ask for a second.
On second reading.
On second reading? Okay. On second reading, and I'll ask for a second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Limpert. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that goes forward 3-0 on suspension, second reading. Okay, so Mr. Limpert, while you were out, we already did the Grafton Wetlands Handbook and Turf Track, and we went to ARPA 2 for last.
Okay, thanks.
So, whoever would like to speak to -75, the ARPA 2, we would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the chair and members of the council. As we understand it, based upon the comments received at the last committee meeting, there were two outstanding issues. One of which was the speed hump versus table versus bump conversation. And the second was with respect to the AV upgrades for city council chambers. I would defer to my colleague, Director Schofield, to discuss the speed hump, bump, table.
Cushion.
Cushion.
Okay, the cushion, yes. So, after the last meeting, pulled the group together, we actually sat down with service, and engineering and police, and talked about the speed tables, and decided not to go that route, but we added, an additional, portable speed sign instead. The reason being that the speed tables, aren't really portable. They have to be, drilled into the roadway, and we didn't want to mess with the roadway design and integrity, so we removed them, and added an additional speed sign.
So, you're saying we are not doing any of these speed bumps, tables, humps?
Correct.
Okay.
The only place the police chief would recommend were two curves, and streets still, Dave Demeline still was not, comfortable with it, so the group decided collectively not to move forward with them, at least not now.
Okay. More on this topic, anyone, any questions or comments or? I think folks are satisfied with that. The other item.
Yes, Mr.
Council
Chairman.
chambers.
Pardon me?
Council chambers?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So as we understood, the task before us from the committee was to redefine the scope more clearly and get some concrete numbers. The special assistant and I were fairly confident in our estimation. We did receive a couple of quotes, and just so you're aware, the scope of work would be to retrofit both this room and council chambers to increase the ability to stream meetings on something a bit more sophisticated on the equipment that we have now. Include presentation monitors, so for example, the projects that will come before our next meeting, we're not all huddled around 24 by 36 black and white photos. It would also include a computer in the dais. For those of you that have been to county council meetings, the dais at the county council meeting has a working computer. You can load your PowerPoint presentation on it. There are screens that reflect back to the audience, so the audience can see what is being presented. Each members of the county council has their screen in front of them, so that the meeting flows a bit more succinctly. It also upgrades our video equipment so that our streaming is more reliable. It's not a what's the brand that we have now?
We have Mevo.
Not a kind of a basic Mevo camera. It's enhanced audio, so I know sometimes audio is patchy in and out on our YouTube channel. So the folks that are wanting to watch our meetings don't always hear the meeting. Sometimes it blacks out. Sometimes there's no audio and they can just kind of make up the words as they go. So we got all of that quote together, and the total cost was in excess of our estimation of $216,000. So we're actually, this room is about $38,000 and some change. City council members, that room is about $216,000. And that's just because of how dated the existing equipment is and the need to bring the room completely up to where we feel is an adequate space to conduct public meetings and have the meetings be available and accessible to all. It also deals with ADA compliance in terms of the types of equipment that we have to have in order to be compliant with ADA law. I know the special assistant from the clerk can attest to the equipment that we haven't had to use. So we're hoping that if we had to tomorrow, it would work for us. But this would upgrade our ADA accessible equipment as well for meetings. So for those that are deaf, they can read a closed caption if need be, that sort of stuff.
It would also make sure that if we are going to put monitors for people, for the audience to see presentations going on, that we have enough, that they're in areas that are visible enough for that we meet ADA requirements for video.
So there'd be 4 monitors, 2 on each side, 1 at the front, and then 1 kind of midway through, so that the entire room could receive the public's business. We recognize that this is a pretty comprehensive scope of work, and welcome any questions, comments, concerns, feedback from the chair or any members of the committee.
So I've had a little bit of discussions with Director Upton and Special Assistant Masserello. I now talked to the committee members on this as we were to do this in committee. I have an appetite for doing things to improve the quality of the video and the audio for the public to be able to interact with our meetings and to enhance the ability to display things. But $250,000 to do that seems to be way beyond what I was expecting for that kind of an improvement. And so,
Mr. Chair, if I could
yes.
clarify, the price that we got that was a vendor who's on state purchasing, who's done multiple city halls. So, we could develop a scope of work and do a public bid and see if that. Sometimes you beat state purchasing, sometimes you don't. So just for your consideration as well.
That would require legislation on part of council to allow us to do that, I believe.
right, so it sounds to me that, again, this is for us to discuss, that we might be best off continuing to look at this, seeing if we can find options that are not in excess of $200,000 but not hold up the rest of the ARPA budget while we do that. So I'll open up the committee for thoughts, questions.
I just had one other question. So that's the scope to implement, right? What is the runway we expect to get out of this equipment before we need to do upgrades or change of the PC? What are the costs for maintaining the screens you're talking about? Like, what kind of budget are we enhancing from what we do today by adding all of these?
So to my knowledge, this is a capital expenditure, an improvement to the building itself. It doesn't involve a subscription or an ongoing capital need. Now, if a monitor burns out, we'll have to replace a monitor, and I believe that our IT department is well equipped to help maintain the equipment like they do all of our other city equipment. They were involved in the specking of the project itself, so I don't believe there's any ongoing, like an annual appropriation that we have to kind of keep the wheels turning, if you will.
But there would be a maintenance budget for having to keep this going, and then the computer would need replacement at a certain number of years.
I mean, there'd be some timeframes on that would have, we'd have to look at making some modifications as time goes on. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think the current system that we use in Chambers was installed in 2014. And the one that we're using in here was installed also in 2014. It had to be replaced 2 years ago because it went bad. And not to kind of jump too far ahead, but I think it's going bad again already after 2 years.
Right now.
So from that perspective, this equipment will have a little bit better warranty on it than what the stuff we currently has on it in terms of warranty. But yes, I mean, there's obviously potential that as things need maintenance or breakdown, there would have to be that, but it wouldn't be necessarily an annual fee. And we haven't broken down the numbers yet to say that if we were to take it, if we need to do maintenance over 5 years, even if we do it once over 5 years, it average out to be X amount over those 5 years. We haven't done the numbers on that yet. We can look into that though, for sure.
Perhaps another way to get to Mr. Lippert's question is what portion of the budget you're looking at right now is what I would call fixed cost to get this done, and what is like the actual equipment itself?
The equipment itself, if I remember correctly from the proposal, was around 100 and, I think it was like around 115, 120, I think Director Upton has it. I know there's engineering costs in there, because we're gonna have to redo a bunch of wiring and electrical in the room, so there's some of that in there. But I think the equipment itself it was over $100,000. I gotta remember.
So on the caucus room, the equipment total was $20,541. There's obviously other costs about install, the services associated with install, the services associated with designing the schematics of, you know, how we get to the back of the wiring panel, if you will. The council chamber room is a bit more extensive.
I was just thinking that might give us an idea
Yeah.
of what costs to exclude, and give us kind of a ceiling of if all the equipment goes bad, what would it?
The equipment total is $130,529, and then again there's installation services, and then the design costs of, you know, designing the project itself, and then shipping costs. It's also important to note, like a lot of things, this industry is severely affected by the disruptions in the supply chain. So it's likely that this install, even though we appropriate it and go through the legislative process, probably doesn't happen until next football season. Quite honestly, that's how long the lead time is for the materials, and that's not getting shorter, right? The supply chain issue is going to remain persistent throughout this process, whether it's this vendor or another vendor.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What is the likelihood, though, that we could still have outlets or some kind of electricity put up on the dais?
That's part of the scope of work in this particular
Right.
proposal.
So if we don't proceed with this portion of it now, could we still proceed with the ability to have outlets put up there for us for our own equipment?
It's gonna require rewiring and stuff. We budgeted for it for the past few years, but we've never moved forward on it because there's been other projects for IT to take a quick look. We just put a placeholder number in for the past few years for council, and waiting for IT to kind of get a chance to take a look at it. Other projects have come up that it hasn't been looked at to see what we can do in terms of in-house. I know even if we went outside, there'd have to be some, I don't know what the cost is.
Why IT with electric?
Well, because they would want to make sure that they're getting, like, they would play a role in it, service would play a role in it, but for them, it's just making sure that we get the right type of equipment for, do we want to have USB outlets for you guys rather than, like plug-in outlets, do we want both? Those are the types of things that they would want to have, that they would have some say in on what would go up there.
So, in terms of a process standpoint, what we are doing is we're appropriating a budget. We're not, like the item that Mr. Penchek brought earlier, we're not specifically getting the field turf. We're not getting the items in this step of the process, but I still would be very hesitant to spend the kind of money that this is on council chambers relative to other uses of the funds. So I don't want to appropriate that and then mislead or surprise after we've, gone and brought contracts to council for a bunch of equipment that we don't actually intend to purchase. So, if that is the will of everyone else.
I guess my question is,
Yes,
there's something, thank you, Mr. Chair, is there something else in the backlog, or the item that didn't make the cut that would have been part of the ARPA 2 proposal from administration?
So it's important to note, for this particular case, it's not just the council chambers. The whole of government kind of runs through that room. So the Civil Service Commission, Planning and Design Commission, BZBA, Arts Commission, Landmarks Commission. There's a lot of city business, a lot of boards and commissions that function through there. So I hear you loud and clear, Mr. Chairman, but the room functions as a multi-purpose room, and I definitely appreciate your concerns. This room, on the day-to-day basis, if there is a large meeting with myself and maybe a developer that wants to build something fantastic in our city, and they want to give a presentation, again, there's the capabilities, we just don't have it, right? There's no way for us to see it, to review it. The scope of work in this room would have a monitor here and a monitor here, and then have the ability such that the AV equipment ties in, so when a presentation happened, like magic, it flips over and the public that's watching on YouTube sees the presentation, they still hear the audio. That also works in reverse, so if we're here conducting the city's business between our normal business hours, I know all of us directors have had many meetings with our insurance folks, and through the whole of what we do that could benefit from these upgrades. So I just encourage, but I do appreciate your concerns. One of the things that we can potentially look at that we discussed was, instead of doing individual monitored dais at each dais, the idea of ceiling mounted monitors in front, maybe 4 or 5 of them, that would actually cut down on some of the wiring, because as I understand that, I know Mr. Scarl knows from his days in the trades, this is pretty thick concrete that you're gonna have to drill through and run wires up through, so it's a lot easier to push a ceiling tile over and shove conduit through than it is to drill through 12, 18 inches of concrete to run these wires through. So we can play around with the scope of work. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and if you want us to study this a little bit more to see if we can whittle that number down, we'd certainly wouldn't be opposed to council moving the legislation forward absent this particular provision at this time. Because we hear and understand the concerns.
All right, Councilwoman Williamson, and then I'll open the rest.
Is the computer monitors that you're talking about for the dais, would our own Surface Pros work?
That would be our goal, correct.
And so we wouldn't need the individual monitors?
Yes, but you still have to run the wiring, you still have to drill through the however thick this concrete is, you still have to basically tear up the floor, right, to get to where you're at, and reconstruct it is how I understand it, based upon.
Or maybe we could just run it through the wall. I don't know, but I'm not the electrician. But I mean, we would save money there though if we used our own Surface Pros, and then we could connect in and.
But the monitors are a couple $100 times 7 or 8, so I hear you. We would save a couple $1,000 for sure.
Chairman, because I just want to make one observation. So I have seen us have presentations where we brought up the screen and brought a computer and had it shown there. And was it a great professional? No. Was it effective and informative, and the audience was able to see it, and the people were able to present? Yes. Like, to me, I think there's some middle ground there where it can be an upgrade from what we have today, which isn't optimal and causes a lot of jumbling around and maybe getting too much of the specialists of having to have the IT person come. But at the same time, like, I know you're referring to what the county council has, but I mean, this is a city council facility, and I only have 8 years of experience here, but the number of times I've had to benefit from this is not been $250,000 worth, I guess, just from my opinion. So, anyway, that's all I have. I do appreciate that it is a need and something that we need to look at and improve and continue to make it, more value add for the audience.
Mr. Scarl and then the rest of the council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in agreement that I think we need something. This equipment's 8 years old. That's broke, most of it's broke. What is the backup plan if this total system goes down? How do we generate this to the public or whatever? I mean, what's our plan if this thing totally goes?
Voice recorders on cell phones. We've done it before. I mean, that's what our plan is. I mean, when this goes out, when they've gone out, and when that's gone out in there, we've used just a voice recorder to get an audio recording of the meeting.
Well, yeah, that's not acceptable to me, but I've been to other city halls, plus the county council, that is elaborate, but they're on a bigger scale with 50s, 60 some cities that they represent. But a lot of city councils do have really good AV equipment. If you go to their meetings, you can see it. So we need to do something. Just where we can find a happy meeting. Thank you.
Yes, I'm neither at zero. I agree that there is room for improvement here. It's just the scale of what we're talking about. Some of the other programs that we're spending ARPA funds on are not $250,000. We're talking about opportunity cost here. We just repaved West 231st. That was in the vicinity of $250,000, $300,000. Bring scope. There's this meaningful amount of money. So I'm sorry. Others would like to make comments, questions.
I was wondering. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering if we could maybe get lower, like a different quote from somebody else, maybe, or maybe of a smaller scale, still upgrading, but maybe not as
Absolutely.
extended.
And we would be open and encourage the chair to allow us to move everything but this forward, because we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and set this aside and let us noodle on the scope, because what you want determines how much it costs. So if we can continue to study this, we at the chair's request, we've had about 3 weeks to really define this, and Chuck and I reviewed a handful of city hall renovation projects and kind of put our best guess as to what that number was. Turns out we were pretty close to being right, but unfortunately it was more, not less. So it warrants some further study, and would ask that the committee amend the legislation, allow everything that we're okay with to move forward, so we can continue to move things forward with respect to the ARPA funding.
We're going to have additional rounds of ARPA because there's going to be some level of funds that don't get spent from the various things that we've already made as projects. How much that will be, who knows? I'm certainly, if we have another proposal for this, willing to come back to this in short order. But I agree. I think in terms of our business for tonight, moving forward on the rest of the 75 items would be prudent. We have a rough consensus on that. Okay. So I would then move to favorably recommend 75 without the council chambers and caucus funds, and ask for a second. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. As 3-0 as amended. I believe that concludes finances business here at 7:54.
I would like to start the building zoning and development committee meeting at 7:55 p.m. on September 27th. City caucus chambers, present are committee members, Lambert and Williamson. On the agenda are CMS 22-22253, Nielsen Developers, CMS 22-22724, Oak City Vapors, and CMS 22887 Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and lastly, Springvale Ballroom Landmark Designation. Starting with Fieldstone Developers, Mr. Allen.
Mr. Chairman, at the risk of art imitating life, I'm going to put this right here, so we can all take a look. I'd like to invite Mr. Jeff Hammerschmidt to come say a few words about the project if you so choose. If not, I could take it from the top. So we are incredibly excited about this project. As you will recall, there was legislation passed earlier this year regarding a community reinvestment area incentive to continue this project moving forward. We've been working with the Hammerschmidt family, also known as Fieldstone Developers. We're proud to have them in the city. They're actually one of the top 10 pool builders in all of North America, and they're located here, not just the United States. They built about 100,000 square foot of spec building that they live in and have grown into, and frankly, in some respects, have grown out of. Those buildings are 100% occupied. There's a huge need in the market for industrial real estate, the Class A industrial real estate. Earlier this year, they acquired from the city this property, and we've been working with them on a development plan for an additional 100,000 square feet of spec building that will, on the low end, create at least 100 new jobs in the city and many millions of dollars of new payroll and tens of thousands of dollars of new income taxes. The Planning and Design Commission met last about a week and a half ago and issued a conditional approval. Some of the things that are a bit wonky about building a spec building when you compare it to some of our requirements, such as they don't know who their tenants are going to be at this point in time, so they have shown a lot of parking. Our Planning and Design Commission asked that they land bank some of that parking pursuant to our code as a condition of the approval. They also have to provide a more complete photometric plan. And there were some comments with respect to the way in which some of the trees were planted and some of the species of the trees that just need to be tweaked a little bit. And then a little bit more needs to be done with respect to the irrigation system. The last condition of the Planning and Design Commission stipulated was that they produced to us a new set of drawings that kind of incorporates all of those changes. So after your questions, they would ask that the motion to approve, if that's the pleasure of this body, be accept and impose the recommendation of the Planning and Design Commission for conditional approval of the same, and with a further condition that the amended development plans be submitted prior to the issuance of permits by the engineering and building department. That's the motion we'll be asking for this evening. So happy to take any questions with respect to this project. Like I said, we're incredibly excited about a substantial investment in the city.
Thank you, Director. As it reads, my question was related to what's the assessment of the impact related to water runoff or impact of additional acreage of cement road parking? Like, have we done an assessment?
So when you land bank parking, it provides their ability to add additional. The code also requires that there are impervious parking spaces that will mitigate the effects of stormwater runoff. So similar to some of the parking that you see right out front of City Hall, that's considered pervious parking spaces. So that's how you can mitigate additional issues of stormwater runoff. And before they are able to dig one shovel's worth of dirt, Engineer DeFranco would have to certify to the state.
Questions from committee? Questions from council? Thank you, Director. I know this is an exciting project for the administration and for the benefit of the city, so looking forward to that. Do we have a expected start date for them based on this being approved?
Tomorrow? anticipated groundbreaking, end of the third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter, depending.
Depending on the engineer.
Yeah, so we're hoping to break ground before the end of this year. There's minor cleanup on a few things, but we're hopeful that this happens soon.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions from council? Audience? Looking forward to it. Thank you for bringing this proposal to us. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to.
Mr. Chairman, if I may read the motion as suggested from the law department.
Yes, that'd be good. Go ahead.
Motion to approve the development plans submitted by Fieldstone Developers, case 22-2253, and to accept and impose the recommendations of the Planning and Design Commission for the conditional approval of the same, and with the further condition that the amended plans be submitted prior to the issuance of permits by engineering and building departments.
I move to recommend CMS 2022-22253 Fieldstone Developers as specifically noted by the Economic Development Director, and ask for a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 2-0. Next on the agenda is CMS 222-2724 Brick City Vapors. And Mr. Senator,
That's me. So Brick City Vapors, they have been in the city for a long time. They're formerly located on the Brook Park extension. They moved because of the condition of their building. They just wanted to move to a nicer building, and who wouldn't? They made an application to our office. Vape shops are conditional use permit stipulated on two specific criteria. One is that they have to be in a building that's at least 30,000 square feet. The building that they are in is just over, I think it's 30,800 and some odd square feet if memory serves correctly. And they cannot be within 1,000 feet of drug paraphernalia, hookah shop, body art, piercing, tattoo, or similar. They are not. In fact, where they're located, you'll see, if you go there now, you'll see Tattoo Shop in that same plaza. That shop is actually closed. Drove by it myself, verified they are no longer tattooing at that shop. So they meet both of those standards for approval. Moreover, I visited their operation. They've been in the city, like I said, for a number of years. They only sell vapes. There's no marijuana leaf, paraphernalia, signs hanging. There's no kratom or whatever synthetic stuff that folks are using these days. It's none of that. It's strictly vapors. It's a nice clean shop, and they're just here doing the right thing. So that's
where is this?
28867 Marine Road.
Right over near Stearns on the by the BP.
Let's know.
Pardon me?
Sunoco.
Sunoco, sorry. But yes, right over in that plaza. I'm thinking of
The other plaza.
Give it a second.
Mr. Chairman, may I add as well,
Director,
the police chief has told me that there's never been any problems with the business, that it's good business. So there hasn't been any public safety concerns at all.
Yeah, thank you. I forgot that point. We actually asked the police chief to look up the call log, and the only time the police have ever been out to this establishment, and they've been victims of shoplifting. So,
any questions from committee? You are committee.
What are the hours of operation for the business?
It's 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Saturday, and 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Sunday.
Thank you.
Any other questions from committee? Questions from council? Alright, seeing none, any questions from the applicant or anyone else in the audience? Okay. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to recommend CMS 2022-2724 22-724, Brick City Vapors. Do all council ask for a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 2-0. Next on the agenda is CMS 22-22887, Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And I assume, Mr. Upton, you're gonna take that.
I'm gonna sit down for this one.
Okay, that sounds good. Like you're in a car seat. Go for it. Not a
Car
child
seats
seat,
are-
not a child car seat, but an actual automobile seat. Go ahead.
I'm drowning in car seats, Mr. Chairman. So this particular application, 28867, the use of the, for those of you that don't know, it's a Lorraine Road address, but it's actually the vacant out parcel building next to Giant Eagle. It's been closed for a long period of time. The existing Enterprise Rent-A-Car on Lorraine Road, just up the road from us, they've outgrown their space. They've done really well, and they need more space, which is a good thing. They have come to the BZBA committee. They received a variance for the maximum allowable foot candle lighting because people drop cars off in the morning or late at night, and they have to be able to look and see and make sure they didn't hit a rodent or dent or scratch and that sort of thing. The BZBA committee did grant the variance of the stipulations between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. It is for 30 foot candles of lighting, so think of the lighting that's underneath a gas station canopy. That's similar type foot candle lighting. Our department supported that variance because in looking at the surrounding properties, there's no light pollution. It's all commercial property. It doesn't negatively affect any residential structure, so we are in support of that variance. They then had to go to Planning and Design Commission for a conditional approval, and it's the standards of review are your general standards. Is it compatible, and I believe harmonious is the word that they use, compatible and harmonious with congruent and adjacent uses, and it doesn't negatively affect the neighborhood or anything of those sorts. Planning and Design Commission in hearing their case and deliberating thought that conditional use requirements were met and moved and supported the conditional use for the Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So we're happy that this building is growing, and going to work to backfill that building on Lorraine Road with a new business. So.
Now, just to clarify, is this lot, you said it was near the Giant Eagle, this is the one that's close to Lorraine Road?
It's got that maroon stripe that goes all the way through the center of it, so that the building will be repainted.
So south in that plaza, the southmost in that plaza.
I'm not good at car directions, Mr. Chairman.
Close to McDonald's?
Correct, yes.
Next to Planet Fitness?
Yes, but on that house, so in that.
Yeah, Circuit City, I was gonna say, thank you. For all those residents, Circuit City.
Circuit City.
Yes, former Circuit City from a year ago. So I guess my only question is on the lighting. I guess their hours of operation are currently 7 a.m. till.
No, so 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. That just handles the time of year when it's dark at 5 o'clock in the morning when people are picking up cars, and it's dark at 5 o'clock in the evening when people are dropping off cars from the airport. It's not their hours of operation, but when they were asked by the BZBA committee, they wanted to put some kind of guardrails on when they could exceed that lighting requirement, and that's what they said they needed, and that's what BZBA was amended.
So you said it was 5 till
7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay.
Those are the hours for lighting, not the hours of operation.
No, I understand that. I'm surprised at that because there actually could be a benefit of them having light longer, in that there's other, like the Planet Fitness next door is actually open at 5 a.m. and it's super dark, and like if they were actually people returning cars and they wanted to have it available earlier for safety, I would think where that's located that would actually be an overall benefit and safety for that for beyond just the rental cars, but also people going to loading trucks and getting ready for Giant Eagle, Planet Fitness. I mean, I don't know if you can amend based on
Mr.
businesses
Chair, I would
are there.
defer to Director Giroux as to how this body would amend a variance that was granted by PCPA to allow for a greater period of time in which they could exceed the maximum foot candle height.
I guess I wouldn't, let me just put it on the record.
That's the shortest answer you're ever gonna
Yeah.
get from me.
I guess I would just put it on the record that from a safety perspective, if that business would want to have lighting for a longer period of time, I think it's of benefit to the safety of that plaza to allow that. And based on what's around it, that's not a detraction to residents or light pollution. It would actually, as dark as it is there, promote more safety and security in that area.
And then, they could seek an additional variance if they wanted to come back at some point in the future, if they felt that it was not adequate for their needs, they could come back. There's nothing stopping them from, now he's asked for an additional variance, if they determine that it's not adequate for what they're trying to do.
Okay.
Doesn't happen often, but it certainly is an option.
We'll let the record state, I think the committee would be favorable to that.
Go ahead, Ms.
Oh,
Wilson.
thank you. I just wanted to know where are the cars gonna be parked?
So if you look at the materials that you were presented, it shows the staging area for the cars on. There is some modification to the, on the site plan. It wasn't subject to the variance, but there's some modification to allow greater circulation because, you know, when you pull in to pick up a car, you have to pull around the back, so they're gonna be able to tap into the existing parking there as well as some of the additional parking that's in the building. They've already had those conversations with the landowner with respect to that.
But how will that affect the current businesses there now? So
The current businesses there are generally speaking over parked. There's more parking than they ever would use, even if it's Black Friday or.
Have you been over there?
I have. I mean, it's.
Yeah, you're walking. It's busy. It's a busy parking
Correct.
lot.
Correct.
So where will they be storing these vehicles?
So they have parking that's within their parking lot, but also additional parking on the north behind the building. So it would be easy for me to show you.
So the storage of their vehicles will be behind the building?
So here.
Southwest.
So here is where the additional storage parking.
That's all they know.
They don't have a fleet like an airport rental car would, so to speak. So their parking is here. They would have some additional spaces back to park their rental cars. And they work that out with the landlord who they're renting from.
How many vehicles do they have?
I don't know in a normal business site, but it fluctuates because some people pick up there and drop off somewhere else. You know, in the dead of winter, less people travel. You know, during Thanksgiving, I'm sure they have quite a bit. It fluctuates.
Mr. Chairman, I think a lot of them, I think a significant portion of that bus fleet is in relation to auto repair facilities where somebody's getting, anytime I've been over there, there's been a few times, most of the people are dealing with getting replacement vehicles for the automobile dealerships around here that are doing body work or accidents from the Gerber Center, things like that. They'll run you over and get that car. And they're on a pretty small lot where they're at right now, so they don't have a giant inventory. It was tight, but I mean, we go back to it's maybe 10 cars at most. So I don't know what they're planning on doing, if they're really going to blow that out and start going for a different market or what. But it was a fairly small fleet, maybe by because it had to be because of the limitation of the lot. But a lot of that dealt with Gerber, to be honest with you, and then the North Homestead Collision Center is another one they use a lot. So I think that's a good.
I got 3 kids. I'm born and raised here. All my kids have smashed their cars. All the insurance companies use that enterprise. All my 3 kids have had car accidents. Not going to go there. So you're right. It is the body shops, but every insurance company they refer them right there. So they're transferring from Westlake. I mean, I've been there so many times now. I know the guy. They're transferring the cars from Westlake and one into the city. So it's mainly insurances and auto bodies. It's not airport or.
Do you have them on retainer then?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Why don't you just buy a body shop?
I think it's a wrecking joint now, but one across from Dairy Queen, I used to be buddies with him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
I'm just concerned with the parking issue, that's all. I think that, you know, I understand that they have an agreement with the current owners, but we don't know the size of the fleet. I mean, look, I'm gonna vote for this, but these are my concerns.
Yeah.
We don't know the size of the fleet. We know that there's a Planet Fitness there. We know that people go in early hours. I would really hate to see Enterprise taking up those front spots and having people utilizing Planet Fitness at 5 in the morning, having to walk from the back of the parking lot.
Yeah, but the lot is actually what abuts McDonald's and it's very far south. There's actually spots that back up to McDonald's, turn around.
Okay, so that, but people going to get vehicles, they're gonna rent a vehicle for Thanksgiving, so they're gonna drop their car off there, and then they pick up a car over here. Like, how do we make sure that we're utilizing the spaces properly and we're not taking up spaces for other businesses there?
Collectively speaking, when that particular development was approved, whenever it was, it's many years ago, right? There was a calculation that was done that said, here's the square footage of all of these buildings, and here's the requisite number of parking for all that square footage. Now, that out parcel building wouldn't have been allowed to have been approved if there wasn't determined to be enough parking there for that building. So, and I would venture to say, with a fair degree of certainty, that those parking calculations were overkill, right? And so they're not adding they're not using something for that building that wasn't already approved for the parking regulations as it sits for the total square footage of those buildings. Because parking calculations, as they were, wrong, right, or indifferent, are a function of the square footage of the building which you're trying to build, or the number of employees. Like a Quick Lube has got a parking spot for every employee plus, I think, 2 additional spots that are required. So that the spots that are there are a function of the size of the buildings that are there. The building footprint isn't changing, so the parking calculation doesn't change as to how many spots are needed.
Well, right, but this is also a facility that's going to be utilizing parking. That's their business. Mm-hmm. So, and it's long-term parking rather than the short-term. Mm-hmm. So that's my concern. Mm-hmm. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Any questions from the committee? Sorry, excuse me, thank you. Any questions from council?
So, put a pretty fine point on this, but retail is a high demand for parking spot use, right? Versus other, when you're deciding how many spots you need for X square footage, if you know that it's going to be retail, you know it's going to be a Giant Eagle, or you know that's a pretty high ratio you'd be plugging into that equation to start with. Because that's what these all were for retail.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay.
Correct. It was a Circuit City.
That's what I'm saying.
Which, when it was built, was significant traffic. So,
it's not like it was an office building that was expecting,
but to be
40
fair,
cars to be parked.
To be fair to my committee member here, you're actually taking physical spots for 24/7 for vehicles, right? So whereas retail's turnover, so there's turnover calculations. But it's something to monitor. I've seen that spot. I think it's just something to be aware of how much traffic the Enterprise is using. Any other questions from council? At this time, I'd like to motion to recommend CMS 22-22887 Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Ask for a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 2-0. And last on the agenda is Springville Ballroom Landmark designation. Madam Mayor, are you going to address that, or is Mr. Upton?
Mr. Upton.
Mr. Upton, it's the last Tuesday was the Councilman Mumford show. This is the Mr. Upton show.
I like your show better.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I like your show better.
I'll pass the card and we'll let you out of the seat.
Turn the child locks off, I'll be able to get out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, as you know, you are a member of this committee of resident volunteers. The Landmarks Commission at the beginning of this year endeavored to do some research with respect to Springville Ballroom and its contributions as a historic building. And it structures contributions to the history and the cultural significance of the city of North Olmsted. The citizen volunteers did the research. They presented to the Landmarks Commission a report of their findings on how the Springville Ballroom contributed to the cultural history, especially with respect to the Bidoff family, with respect to the dances and the sock hops that happened during the World War II era, and its place as a wedding venue, a really an iconic facility in the community. They presented that to our Planning and Design Commission last month. Planning and Design Commission accepted their report, and by way of their minutes, conveyed to this body that is constitutes their statutory obligations underneath the code to submit a report to you all for final determination as to whether or not the Springville Ballroom meets the thresholds and criteria established by statute to be designated as a landmark. We've been meeting with Mr. O'Malley on this, and he's been helping guide us with respect to making sure all the statutory obligations have been met. It is our intent at the 100th anniversary next year to unveil the landmark designation. Should this body accept the body of work done by Landmarks Commission and by way of the minutes, the report issued by the Planning and Design Commission, and by way of ordinance, which will be coming to you mid-October, designate this as a landmark in the city of North Olmsted.
Thank you, Mr. Upton. Just a quick, before we get into discussion, I do want to thank the Landmarks Committee for one who gets a report, but specifically Ms. Egan Reeves and Ms. Schuler, who put a lot of effort into getting that put together, and doing the background and interviewing and getting everything packaged together into this presentation. It was a long journey, and they should be recognized for their efforts there. Any questions from committee around the proposed designation? Just humor me with a funny story. Is back about 20 years ago, I asked my grandparents what they were doing for New Year's, or they asked me, and I said I was going to go play cards, and they were going to Springville Ballroom to celebrate New Year's. So that's when I really knew my life was on a downward trajectory of excitement. When my grandparents had better plans for New Year's than I did. So a little humor there, but this definitely has been a facility here for a long time in the community, and has a rich history, and the city ownership, I think, has only added to that. Any questions from council? Mr. Glassberg.
So generally, when you designate something as a landmark, historical, protected status, etc., it confers both benefits and then future restrictions on the property. What, if any, future restrictions are we committing to, or protections, depending on your viewpoint?
Great question to the chair, Mr. Glassberg. There is standards set forth by the Department of the Interior and the way in which historic buildings have to be maintained so that they maintain their historic character. And so any improvements that we would do to alter the aesthetic nature of the building would be subject to those requirements. Sometimes there is additional costs, but my personal view is that if you're maintaining a historic asset, you probably ought to do it the right way. On the flip side, the benefit is the ability to potentially pursue state and federal historic tax credits should such a substantial repositioning or redevelopment or renovation of that property needed in the future. Think of the Drury Hotel in downtown Clayton. That was not possible without state and federal historic tax credits. So there's a couple extra hoops to jump through, but I believe it's warranted.
and Mr. Blackburn, thank you, that remind me. The main building, because we've had some additions on Springvale, this is really just for the ballroom building. Correct. Make that clear to everyone, this is the ballroom.
So if we're gonna alter the clubhouse, we don't have, it's just the ballroom
building itself. Okay, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to recommend, the Springvale Ballroom landmark designation to council and ask for a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 2-0. And I will conclude the Building Zone Development Committee at 8:27 p.m.
That includes the floors that we just sanded.
I think that floor looks fantastic. Looks fantastic.